could go back to school because I had a strong educational foundation where I could learn and return and get my GED, my MBA, and eventually a law degree. I was able to have my baby at 15 at Parkland Hospital and have the health care that we needed to thrive. In a Texas of hope, I was able to raise my children, educate my children, buy a house, start a small business, and be part of that American dream in a Texas of hope, not hate. That's the Texas that Beto is fighting for. Beto is fighting for a Texas where we live, where we thrive, not where we struggle day to day to survive. That is a Texas of hope, not hate. Don't you want a governor who allows parents, mothers, and fathers to nurture and love their gender-curious child without fearing? You want a governor who supports women and says, you know, I believe in you. You're strong enough and smart enough to make your own choices. Don't you want a governor who governs from a place of love and not hate? So my people, my familia, Beto days are coming. I present to you the next governor of Texas.
Ana-Maria Ramos. Yeah. It is so good to see so many of you out. It's really, really hot outside. But think about it this way. Think about it this way. You don't want to hear what was just said behind me. Think about it this way. It is very hot right now. But it beats the alternative. Because if it was very, very cold, we'd go home and no lights, no heat, no running water. If for no other reason than making sure that the power grid works when we go into winter, we got to win this election on November 8th. Are you ready? We got to get this done. I want to thank Mike. I want to thank Frederick. I want to thank Representative Ramos for bringing us together, kicking us off, and energizing us right now for the work ahead. The 6 months, almost to the day, that we have in front of us between now and when our future will be decided, not just for those here, but for those little kids that we brought with us who aren't old enough to vote and are counting on us right now, for those people who are yet to come, the generations that will follow ours, who will look back, the people of the future looking back on us in 2022, and they're going to want to know, given everything that is happening right now in the state of Texas, all of these decisions being made by those in positions of power to come after the most vulnerable among us, to define us, as a representative just said, not by who we love, but who we hate, who we're afraid of, our fears instead of our ambitions and our aspirations. You better believe our kids and our grandkids, their kids and grandkids as well, will look back on us and they'll say they had everything within their command. The right to vote, millions of people who formed a majority in this state who wanted something better. But what did they do? Did they sit back and hope that someone was going to ride to the rescue and solve this for them? Were they bystanders? Were they in the audience? Were they in the front row watching this, enjoying it, the action, because it wasn't happening to them. It's happening to someone else. Someone who took forward to defend themselves. Someone who, unlike some of the men in the state, could sit back comfortably. Say, you know what, if I were a woman, maybe that would be tough. I don't know what it feels like, so I'm just going to let this one ride. You know, Representative Ramos mentioned the parents of these transgender kids. And I'll tell you what, having met so many of them now across the state of Texas, you find me more loving parents anywhere on this planet than those who are trying to help these kids navigating the toughest moments of their lives. That's who the governor's going after right now, instead of fixing that grid so that the power works when we actually need it this winter. But I want to acknowledge this. It's Mother's Day. And I'm thinking about my wife, Amy, who's at home with our 3 kids. She made a big brunch this morning for her mom, Sita, who's one of the best grandmothers out there. She's going to spend part of the day with my mom, Melissa, who raised me, who gave birth to me and my 2 sisters, and who I was thinking about this morning has bequeathed me my inheritance, right? My characteristics, my traits. I'm 6'4". My dad was 5'10" on his tiptoes, okay? This is my mom. She gives me something to look up to. She is the kindest, most compassionate, most humble person I've ever met. And I'm none of those things on a regular enough basis for my own satisfaction, but I aspire to be more like her. She gave me an example and a role model to live up to, and an example for the kids that we're raising in my house. I think about the mothers who have made this moment possible that we're in right now. The fact that we live in this democracy, we too often, almost all the time without exception, we talk about these founding fathers back at the end of the 18th century. And certainly, we are grateful to them, and they deserve our gratitude. So many choices before them in the whole of human history. It was so rare to decide on democracy. Well, at least democracy for white men who owned property at the time. But democracy nonetheless, when the rule of human history had been authoritarianism, had been kings and dictators and strongmen who ruled by dictating. The very idea we were going to freely and fairly choose the direction of this country, and that over time we've expanded who's there making that choice right alongside with us. Over time, women, that was not men granting anything to anyone else. It was the women of the United States of America and Texas fighting for that right and making it possible right here. Women like Ida B. Wells, an African-American woman who made sure that the franchise was not just going to be one for white men or white women, for that matter, who risked her very life being an advocate for those who faced persecution constantly over the course of their lives. Succeeded decades later by Septima Clark in the South, who started these citizenship schools during the time of Jim Crow, because if you lived in the Deep South and you were black and you wanted to vote, they were going to have you prove your literacy, prove that you knew part of the state constitution. They were going to put every barrier in your path to prevent you from being able to participate in our politics. And these citizenship schools, initially, they trained hundreds in how to read and how to write and how to be ready for that registration test that they would face at the county courthouse. Soon it grew to thousands, tens of thousands. Before she was done, hundreds of thousands of our fellow Americans were able to enter the role because of her courage and the fact that she was willing to go up against anyone, anytime, any place to make sure that we fulfilled this great democracy she's been hearing about her entire life. How about this? After we win a right to vote, I'm coming to that next. After we all win the right to vote in 1965, it was Barbara Jordan, one of the greatest of all Texans, who said, hey, the Voting Rights Act of 65 just isn't enough. We've got to make improvements. We've got others like language minorities who speak Spanish, who quieren entender su información en español, también quieren votar en español, quieren escoger sus candidatos en español. They should be protected as well. That 1975 rewrite of the Voting Rights Act, that was one of our fellow Texas women, Barbara Jordan. And listen, the biggest applause that I get consistently anywhere I am in Dallas is simply by saying Clay Jenkins. But you could probably see this coming. There is no Clay Jenkins without Joanne Jenkins. And she's right here with us right now. And Joanne Jenkins, state committee woman, joining and leading and starting so many of the great political organizations in this state that confer more power to the people who've been written off or taken for granted or forgotten or left behind, choosing to run to be and to serve as the county chairwoman in Ellis County, that hotbed of liberal activism that you all know about. It doesn't matter the prospects or the polling there, she was willing to step up and do the work. I'm just saying this, that whether it was Joanne or Barbara Jordan or the great Ann Richards, the last great in the state of Texas, they are the mothers of this moment. They've made what we are going to do possible. We are enjoying the inheritance that they struggled, that they sacrificed for, that they are giving to us right now. And what we do with it defines each and every single one of us in their eyes and in our kids' eyes forever. We must not squander this moment. I want to tell you, this last week was a tough week. It was, to use a different meaning of this word, it was a mother. Maybe we knew this was coming all along, but to read that draft opinion from the Supreme Court and to know after 49 years the right to privacy, to make your own decisions about your own body, your own health care, and your own future would be taken away. And it's not theoretical, it's not possible, it is happening right here in the state of Texas. Greg Abbott signed a bill called a trigger bill that outlaws abortion upon conception. Outlawed from conception, and let's make sure we all understand this, and you got to share this with the folks who were not here. We can assume nothing about anyone out there in Texas right now. There is no exception for rape. There is no exception for incest. Right here in the state of Texas. Now, we're up against some tough odds. We're up against the majority of the Supreme Court. We're up against, frankly, folks, I hate to say this, I'm a proud Democrat, but we're up against our own party in the United States Senate that cannot get their act together to do the right thing at this defining moment of truth. It's on us. It's down to the people of Texas, just like Alito wanted it, right? Yeah. Justice Alito says, hey, this shouldn't be decided at the federal level. This belongs in the states. Well, listen to this. It's coming back to Texas right now. But not only is it possible for us to overcome it, we've overcome this before under much tougher odds. Prior to 1973, abortion was outlawed in Texas as well. Absolutely criminal for any woman to make this decision. But it wasn't from people outside of Texas that the right to an abortion, the right to make your own reproductive health care decisions was won. Jane Roe of Roe versus Wade was, in fact, one of our fellow Texans. And more importantly, Linda Coffey and Sarah Weddington from Abilene, Texas, of all places, were the two attorneys who argued before the all-male United States Supreme Court and won the historic signal Roe versus Wade victory. That was Texas women getting it done. Not only is this possible, we have done it before. This attack on democracy and voting rights, there's a reason that Ana-Maria Ramos had to leave the state legislature, in fact, leave the state to try to stop that Republican majority from taking away your right to vote. She had the courage of her convictions, willing to do everything in her power to stop them from steamrolling this great democracy. Nonetheless, Abbott signed that voter suppression bill into law, and we learned 2 months ago that during this last primary election, a World War II veteran, 95 years old, willing to give his life fighting fascism half a world away to defend democracy right here at home in Texas, had his ballot by mail application rejected not once, not twice, but 3 times. If anyone has earned the right to vote in this state, it is that World War II veteran who put his life on the line for all of us. But when we learned that 13% of the ballots were rejected that were cast in the state of Texas, we're now hard-pressed to call ourselves a democracy at all. And we may look to those who hold political power in this state. It's Greg Abbott and it's his Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. It's the once or twice or thrice indicted Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, under active FBI investigation right now. It's those Republican majority in the state legislature, and they're going to do everything they can to choose their voters because they don't trust us to make these decisions. And we may say, with that much power concentrated in those few hands, what chances do we have? But I call your attention to history once more, and I promise you this is my last lesson. Somebody said, when the governor's trying to tell you what version of history you're allowed to teach, I think we need more history in our lives right now, right? Representative Ramos's predecessors 100 years ago, almost to the day, 1923, in their infinite wisdom, said that no African American in Texas would be allowed to vote going forward. They didn't say there would be a literacy test or a poll tax. I mean, we already had those things on the books. It wasn't how many jelly beans are in this jar before we allow you to register to vote. No, in black and white, in state statute, no black Texan will be able to participate in the Democratic primary, which was the only party primary at the time. There literally were not enough Republicans in the state of Texas to hold a party primary back then. This election decided your county judge, it decided your state representative, your member of Congress, your governor, the electoral college votes that would be awarded from the state of Texas, and no one with skin darker than mine was allowed to participate. Well, there was an African-American doctor in my hometown of El Paso, Texas, Lawrence Aaron Nixon, who started the first chapter of the NAACP in the state of Texas in 1914. He pays his poll tax in 1924, knowing full well that they won't allow him to vote when he goes to the polling place. Sure enough, he walks over to polling place number 5 on Texas Avenue in El Paso that July of 1924, shows his poll tax receipt, and the election judge, who he had to know because Nixon voted in every single election in El Paso, said, Dr. Nixon, you know I can't let you vote. And Dr. Nixon responded, I know you can't, but I've got to try. And try he did, even though they rejected him that day, solely based on the color of his skin. He took that case to the federal district court in El Paso. He lost. He appealed. The appeal made it all the way to the United States Supreme Court, where he won. The Texas legislature came back and said, okay, Dr. Nixon, I see what you got. We have something better. They tweaked the law to get past that Supreme Court decision. He tried to vote again, goes into the polling place, pays his polling tax. They see the receipt, they say, Dr. Nixon, we can't let you vote. He says, I know you can't, but I've got to try. Takes the case to court, again, another Supreme Court victory, but it still wasn't enough. He still had to keep fighting because they found new ways to keep him and others who looked like him from voting. It was not until 1944, 21 years after he began, every single 2-year election cycle, going into the same damn polling place, presenting that poll tax receipt because he paid out of his own pocket, knowing that he would not be treated as the human being, as a U.S. citizen that he was. But he had faith in himself and in this democracy. But every time they said, we can't let you vote. And he said, I know you can, but I've got to try. Until 1944, another Texan, this time in Houston, Lonnie Smith from the 5th Ward, also a physician, tries to vote, is rejected based on the color of his skin, takes his case to the Supreme Court, and he wins. He wins, and we integrate elections in the state of Texas beginning in 44 because these guys had the courage, had the persistence, had the tenacity, and they had the faith. Now, when I talk about these women and these men who gave us this opportunity, you think long and hard about what you are willing to do. I mean, they risked their lives in some cases. They risked their dignity. They endured such disrespect. It is hard for us to imagine. And all we're asking of each other right now is but to vote, to get our friends to vote, and to go meet those voters out there who do not know the stakes of this election. Let me put it in math terms that maybe I can understand. We lost by 216,000 votes in 2018. Out of more than 8 million cast. It was 2.6%. That was the Delta. We saw some great Democrats win office. Representative Ramos and 11 other new state Democrats elected to the legislature. We saw Colin Allred elected to Congress. We saw 17 black women elected to judgeships in Harris County alone. And we all together produced the largest voter turnout in Texas since the year of our Lord, 1970. But it wasn't enough, right? 216,000 votes down. Here in Dallas County, I won just under 500,000 votes. But check this out. In 2020, arguably the most important presidential election, at least of our lifetimes, right? 400,000 people in Dallas County eligible to vote did not cast a ballot. Now, when 750 polling places have been closed down in your state, most of them concentrated in the fastest growing black and brown neighborhoods, when you have a voter ID system that is so punitive and onerous that it allows you to use your license to carry a firearm to prove who you are at the polling place, but it doesn't allow you to use your UNT student ID to prove who you are at the polling place. When you have a gerrymander that draws people out of districts based on their race and ethnicity, so that a 3-judge federal panel calls it a racial gerrymander of the state to minimize black and brown political power, to elevate that of others, to keep those who are in power there forever going forward until we change it, then we can forgive those who might wonder whether it is worth their time. But the number one reason given by those who have not voted before is that no one ever asked them to do so. Since 2020, another 100,000 new voters have been added to the rolls in Dallas County. These are folks who just turned 18. These are new U.S. citizens. These are our fellow Americans who want to get it. That's 500,000 net new voters. Folks, we can more than double the margin by which we lost and turn that into the margin of victory in this next race just in Dallas County. We do that, and I'll tell you what our future is. No longer do we worry about these attacks on women, because every woman will make her own decision about her own body and her own future every single time. And then we'll make sure that every woman working the same job as every man is paid the same for the value of their effort and their work. We're talking real respect here in the state of Texas. We're going to make sure that no transgender child nor their parent feels that they're going to be attacked by this governor, prosecuted for child abuse, placed into a child protective services system that is so badly run that kids are dying by the dozens right now in the custody and the care of the great state of Texas. No, instead we remind everybody this state is big enough for all of us to live to your full potential with the pride that we feel about you. And we're going to make sure the most vulnerable, including those kids in CPS, who number 30,000 right now, get the support and the help, the investment, and the accountability from their government they've been missing under Greg Abbott. We're going to make sure that these world-class public school educators no longer feel like their governor's coming after them, no longer are so underpaid that they're working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet, that those retired teachers who have not seen a cost of living adjustment since 2004 get one going forward every single year, because as costs go up, so should the cost of living adjustment go up. We're going to make sure that we do common sense things like expand Medicaid so more people can see a doctor, take their child to a mental health care provider, be healthy enough, be well enough to live to their full potential. And together, Democrats, Republicans, independents alike, we are going to legalize marijuana in the state of Texas. No longer are we going to put people behind bars for possession of a substance that's legal almost everywhere else in the developed world. The money that we save, the taxes on the controlled sales, we put that into our real priorities, like going from 50th in mental health care access to first in the nation if we have anything to do about it. Imagine being focused on the big things that can bring us together, instead of being pitted against one another, stoking more division, further fracturing this state. That's everything that Greg Abbott is doing to us right now. We have the choice, and this is the choice that I'm asking you to make. In addition to being here on this really warm day, being with your families in some cases, going to see your mom a little bit later in other cases. But whatever it was, you sacrificed a little bit of your time to be here with us today.
Anything for you.
Thank you. In addition, many of you have donated to the campaign, for which we are grateful. Day in, day out, dollar for dollar, we are outraising Greg Abbott in this race, and that's huge. So keep it up. But here's what's going to win this. So we can come up with the most brilliant television ad that woman or man have ever seen. But you may not watch TV, or you may just be a nerd to anything that's political and you just don't pay attention. You may or may not read that mailer that we work so hard on that goes into your mailbox and just sits on your kitchen counter until December of this year. The cute things that we put up on Instagram, the thoughtful tweets on Twitter, all that stuff might fly by you, or it may just confirm the bias you already have and not bring in anybody new. What's transformational and more powerful and profound than any of that is talking to, better yet, listening to one of your fellow Texans face to face, eyeball to eyeball, human being to human being. That shit is powerful. It is. You will never forget someone taking the time, a complete stranger, to knock on your door, knowing not what to expect when that door opens, and having a conversation from their own heart, in their own words, about why this election is so important to them, why it is so important to you. I guarantee you, of those 500,000 eligible non-voting folks right here in Dallas, the best way we have to bring them in is by being at their doors. And over the course of the state of Texas, across the other 253 counties, there's another 6,500,000 of them. That's the real majority in the state of Texas. You would have Medicaid expansion. You'd have full protection for women's rights. You wouldn't have to worry about a Don't Say Gay bill coming down in the next legislative session if that majority were voting right now. But that majority is not going to vote unless you show up at their door and ask them. Now, I've got to ask you, are you willing to do this work? I need you to do this for me then. We want you to text the word Texas to 20377. That's the way that you demonstrate this commitment, and you are welcome to do it here. I know it's usually rude to pull out your cell phone when someone's talking on the microphone, but this time of all times, please do it. It's Texas to 20377. You do that, and I promise you, we are signing you up, and we're going to put you to work. This is not one where you get to just be on the sofa or on the couch or hope that someone else is going to do it. I need you out there on the streets and on the doors. It's the only way, just to be clear, it's the only way we're going to win for the stuff that we were just cheering for and yelling about and getting so excited for right now. So if you want it that bad, we've got to work for it. No other way to get it done. That's what my mom taught me on this Mother's Day. All right, thank you all for coming out today. We're going to have a few people. We're going to ask a few people to share their thoughts. Ask questions if you want to get into the conversation. We won't make it long, maybe another 15 minutes or so. Anybody who'd like to get into this conversation, raise your hand. Cynthia Cano, who's right here, will bring a microphone to you, and we'll try to get as many voices into the mix as possible. Thank you all again.
If you raise your hand, I will squeeze my way to you. Sorry if I bumped you on the way.
Hi, Beto.
Hey there.
So I was talking to my daughter this morning, as a matter of fact. She's 27 years old.